Welcome to the Holy Post. Today we're suspicious of a new study that finds MAGA supporters score higher in authoritarianism, social dominance, and malevolent personality traits, while liberals score higher in compassion and empathy. Then church planter Brad Edwards says many of us hold beliefs, language, and values that sabotage our ability to benefit from participation in a church. He talks to Kaitlyn about his new book, The Reason for Church, and why our anti-institutional instincts may be self-defeating. Also this week, the Secretary of Defense reposted comments from his pastor saying that women shouldn't be allowed to vote. The Catholic Church says ICE detainees are being denied their religious rights, and robo-bunnies of death. Hey, don't forget about HOLYPOST Plus, where all of our best content is available. We're talking about exclusive podcasts like Getting Schooled and the Sky Pod, bonus interviews with your favorite guests, special video series like Michael Bird's Between Christ and Caesar, and my new book, The World Born in You, which is being released one chapter per month only on HOLYPOST Plus. And that's just scratching the surface of what you'll get. If you like the Holy Post podcast, then you need to realize it's just the appetizer. It's just the front porch of a huge mansion of orthodox, pro-neighbor Christian content. It's like the trailer before the matinee double feature that is Holy Post Plus. So head over to holypost.com and learn how you can join Holy Post Plus today. Here is episode 682.
Hey there, welcome back to the HOLYPOST podcast. I'm here with Skye Jitani. Hi, Skye.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, we're back from Okoboji. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. Y'all know every year we go to Okoboji, which is in Northwest Iowa. It's a Bible conference. And then we come back. And we usually mention it. A couple times we've actually recorded podcasts from Okoboji, but that was probably back. I don't know that we've done that since we've been HOLYPOST podcast.
It's been a while.
I was going to say.
It's been quite a while. Did one with my brother, I think. We did one with a singer, songwriter. We did one with John Stumbo.
Yeah, you're thinking of Groves.
Oh, we
Sarah
did one
Groves.
with her, and we did one with another singer-songwriter.
We did.
A guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, remember him?
I do.
A guy.
A guy.
We did one with a guy. A guy who sings. I am also here, and I'm not just here with Kaitlyn in the electronical sense. I'm here with Kaitlyn in the physical sense. Kaitlyn incarnate.
Oh.
Kaitlyn has been made flesh, and she walks among us.
I never have been before.
She's tabernacling
Now-
among us.
She's tabernacle.
Now I'm real, a real person.
Caitlyn now lives with us. We're all in one house here. There's apartments above the studio.
Like a cult.
We
Yes.
all, yeah.
It's a little bit.
People keep asking us to start a church.
No, it's
and we did
like
it.
it's like a first century church. It's a house church with just one house.
They didn't all live there.
Sure, they did. Sure, they had sleeping bags. They lived together because they shared everything in common. How can you share everything in common?
I kind of like this
if
idea.
you're not living
It's like
together.
the original youth
I'm-
lock-in.
I'm really
event.
into
Yeah.
communes.
Yeah, pizza. Lots of pizza. Lock in. Yeah, and like Japuza, Jesus People USA in Chicago, we end up
Oh.
making our own hard rock band. And we tour the country in a bus like hippies.
I like this idea less and less.
And now it's time for the new theme song.
What's the news that you like the most? Who's your favorite podcast host? If it's breakfast, get your toast. It's Sky-filled Kaitlyn and the Holy Post. Sky-filled Kaitlyn and the Holy Post.
And sometimes other people.
I've got a true story. Amanda and I had a long weekend getaway planned for Cape Cod this summer with some friends. She told me weeks beforehand that I needed to get some new clothes for the trip, but I totally forgot. Then, just the day before we left, a new sponsor to this podcast called Poncho sent me 3 of their shirts to try. So I took them with me to Cape Cod, and I'm not kidding, they are my new favorite shirts. I don't know what kind of fabric they use, but it just feels great. These shirts are seriously comfortable, and they stay cool in the heat. They breathe, and they look fantastic. Here's the best part. They are truly all-day shirts. I wore one of my Poncho shirts all day while hiking around Martha's Vineyard in shorts, and then in the evening, I just threw on some pants and wore the same shirt out to a very fancy dinner. Poncho shirts can dress up or dress down depending on whatever you're doing. And every one is backed by the Poncho Promise. Free shipping and free returns, free exchanges to make sure you get just the right fit. They have a whole bunch of different styles, the original, the Western, denim, and ultralight. You can get them in short or long sleeves, regular or slim fit, and in a ton of colors and patterns. So if you've been looking for the perfect shirt, something breathable that fits great, feels even better, and stands out in a good way, give Poncho a try. Go to ponchooutdoors.com/holypost for a $10 off coupon on your first order. That's Poncho Outdoors, PONCHO outdoors.com/holypost for $10 off and free shipping. And thanks to Poncho for my vacation shirts and for sponsoring this episode. As you know, I've been using AG1 for a while now. For someone who hates taking vitamins and pills, drinking AG1 has been a fantastic way for me to get my vitamins, minerals, and probiotics every day in a delicious drink. And I'm not the only one. Just this morning, my wife was driving me to the office for reasons I don't have to get into. My car was in an accident, it's a whole mess. Anyway, we were on our way out the door and she filled up her own AG1 shaker bottle. And now my son, who's 20 and lifts weights every day, also swears by AG1. You could say I'm sort of a trendsetter in my household. Everyone loves AG1. Look, you may have tried other green drinks and found them to not be very appealing. I get it. I actually didn't expect to like the taste of AG1, but I really do. But there's even better news, because AG1 has just released 3 new flavors: berry, citrus, and tropical. So along with the original flavor, you can find the one that you like best. And just 1 scoop of any AG1 flavor contains the multivitamins, pre- and probiotics, superfoods, and antioxidants you need in one delicious daily habit. If you head over to drinkag1.com/holypost, you'll get a free welcome kit worth $76 when you subscribe. That includes 5 AG1 travel packs, a shaker, canister, and scoop. That's drinkag1.com/holypost to get started. And thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this episode.
Well, Kaitlyn, how'd you like it?
Loved it. I'm so excited to hear it.
Wait, I haven't done it yet. I have to do it after this, after we record.
This is a prophetic word.
It is a prophetic word. New theme songs from Africa. New theme songs from Africa.
Ouch.
Here they come. Okay, we're going to jump right in. Hi, everybody. We had a good time at Okoboji, didn't we, Sky? Except Sky had to teach a course every morning for 90 minutes. And was losing his voice before he started, before day one.
Yes, we got there Sunday and I felt fine, and I woke up Monday and my voice was gone and I was hacking, and it persisted for the whole week.
Yeah.
It's just now getting a little bit better.
Yeah. And your course was?
My course was The Temple from Eden to the End Times.
Ooh. It's about temple theology.
Yeah, based on a series in With God Daily that I wrote this past year.
And do we want to tell people that they can actually watch it on YouTube?
Sure.
Or would you rather I did not tell them that?
You can tell them that.
Okay.
Not a secret.
I listened to it because I didn't.
He didn't attend. He didn't wake up early enough to come.
No, I had work to do.
It
so I was getting up
at 10:30
early
in the morning, Phil.
I was getting
10:30.
I was getting up early. I was making sure my grandkids got to their classes, and I was going to a coffee shop and doing
very likely
email and stuff. Was that sarcastic?
No.
Okay. Better not. Because, I can touch you now.
That means he can poke
That's
you.
a threat.
I can poke you.
Yeah.
I can poke you. Anyway, you could go on YouTube, you could search for Okoboji Bible Conference, and they have a channel. And the live streams that were live streams when you did them are there. And actually, your course is the only one that's there because you were in the big
house.
Yeah, you were in the big house with the recording equipment. Everyone else.
We probably need to spell Okoboji for people.
Seriously.
Okoboji, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain. Okoboji.
It's a very fun word to say.
It's very
It
fun.
is a fun word.
And it lets them do all sorts of things like Boji donuts and Boji bikes and Boji, everything.
You know the other one.
Fun.
What?
Boji nights.
Oh, why did you have to bring that?
Because it shares the parking lot with the conference.
What is that?
It's a strip club.
It's a strip
Oh my
club.
gosh.
It shares the parking lot with the Bible conference.
Yeah.
I missed that part for a second. I thought you meant this was part of the Bible conference.
No, it's adjacent.
No.
It's adjacent.
They share a parking lot.
Yeah, it's right in
You
town.
can see,
That's
like,
a representation of the forces of good and
it's-
evil.
It's not a Christian camp out in the woods all by
Right.
itself. It is a conference
it's so
grounds.
in the world.
Very.
that
A
it
conference
is.
grounds that is right in town
Wow.
and has been there since 1935 when my great-grandfather started it and put the property together. And so the town is all around it.
There's bars and restaurants.
Yeah,
and
so it's like it's kind of like an old school ballpark, where they built them right in the city, in the street grid of the city, as opposed
the
to
main
a club.
building, which is known as the Tabernacle.
Yes.
The Tab.
Good for you.
It has garage doors all along the sides that they roll up, and then they have these big awnings that they put out so people can sit open air at night or during my session, whatever. And those open air awnings and chairs are in a parking lot, and like 3 parking spots away is Boji Nights, which is the strip club.
Yeah.
So it's it's very
They
interesting
listen
place.
to our praise music.
Yeah.
That's great.
I know.
That's beautiful.
I know. Isn't it beautiful? That's a story of people of the church doing good in North America. We should tell that story.
That's right.
Sky.
I remember the first time I spoke there, was it 2006, 5 or 6, something like that? And I was on the main stage at night in a big session. And like this huge line of bikers, like Harley Davidson bikers come rumbling through the main street. And like, you just hear that all the way. It's,
Because everything's open.
Yeah, it's all open.
There's also no air conditioning because it's like a big old barn. It's,
I was supposed to go this year, and I am regretting it less hearing about that.
But they're going to get you for next year,
They're
Sure.
gonna get you.
right?
Getcha.
That's there was talk. There was talk, Kaitlyn Chess.
Mike
Okay.
Erie was supposed to come one year too.
Yeah, but he says he's willing to come now. He just couldn't. He couldn't come because it was the year he'd moved to Nashville, and he
Right.
didn't realize that school started before in like the end of July or August
Why did
1st
they
or
start so
something.
early?
because there's a movement to do that to shorten summer and lengthen other gaps
Breaks,
like spring
yeah.
breaks and fall breaks, so that because of the amount of knowledge kids lose over the summer break and have to relearn every fall. Where it's not happening is states like Michigan, where they have so much summer tourism, and they actually passed a law saying you cannot, no school district can open before Labor Day. Labor Day? Right, Labor Day. I always forget which one.
Is that because families want a vacation, or they need those teenagers to work at vacation places?
No, they don't want to lose the vacation dollars by shortening the vacation season. Yeah, because there's whole towns along the lakes in Michigan that make most of their money in the summer.
There are some places in the South that have laws against it so that the state fair doesn't lose people.
Oh, that's interesting. Aren't you guys glad you tuned in today for this fascinating conversation? Robo-Bunnies are the newest weapon in the fight against invasive Burmese pythons in Florida. Choo, this is so cool. Robo-Bunnies. Choo, choo, choo.
Is it like the Energizer
Take
Bunny?
that, Python. Take that, Python. You got to look it up,
I
don't
was going
you?
to say, are there pictures of
Caitlin's
this?
got to look it up.
Why not a robo-mongoose?
Where is this?
that be
Florida,
better?
pythons.
Scientists are experimenting with robotic rabbits in hopes of luring the destructive snakes out of hiding so they can be euthanized.
They actually look like rabbits. I thought they would be not
No.
furry.
This let me explain to you what's going on here. Scientists at the University of Florida are deploying the so-called robo-bunnies throughout South Florida in hopes of drawing Burmese pythons out of their hiding places so they can be euthanized. By luring the pythons to the rabbit lookalikes, biologists can save time that might otherwise be spent searching through the swamps for snakes. The animatronic rabbits are outfitted with motors and internal heaters that are designed to replicate the behaviors and body temperatures of live marsh rabbits.
So that's why they can't just use stuffed animals.
They can't just use stuffed animals, but they did go out and buy a bunch of stuffed animals and rip their guts out and put electronics inside them, which is why they look like cute little stuffed animals.
Oh my gosh.
No,
It's really just an elaborate lure.
It is. It is. What? Are you okay, Kaitlyn?
Yeah.
I
that's a
thought, I
lot
was
to
really
take.
hoping this would be something where the pythons swallow the rabbits and then the rabbits explode. I thought that would be cool because it's like striking back at the evil invasive species with robotic exploding bunnies. But they're actually in a little pen. They first did this with live rabbits. The problem was, and it actually worked, about one snake a week would come and check out the pen with a live rabbit in it, and then they could catch the snake. Problem was they had to take care of all the live rabbits. And that was kind of...
You got to feed on.
So this is once again, we're losing jobs to automation. So these marsh bunnies, not marshmallows and not Peeps or those little marshmallow bunnies. Marsh bunnies, the pythons find delicious. And some of them were making a living wage for a rabbit, being a lure, dancing around saying, hey, snake. Hey, you want some of this? You want a piece of me? You want a piece of me, snake? And then they'd run away, and then the guys would get them. They lost their jobs to robots.
So they still keep these robo-bunnies in a cage?
Yes. Yeah. They don't want to lose their robo-bunnies.
Okay.
The goal is not... Although I'm sure eating a robotic bunny, maybe they wouldn't, when they actually got that close to it, they'd say,
smell.
oh, this don't feel right.
Yeah.
And it's got this tag hanging off at the end of it. That can't be right. Do you know they've pulled 16,000 Burmese pythons out of the Everglades?
And that's just the ones
What did
caught.
they do with them?
Euthanize
Yeah, that's
them.
what I thought. Okay.
They send them...
Pulled them out. Sounds like they brought them somewhere nice, but...
Oh, yeah,
they killed them.
there's a giant python preserve that they've opened up.
On a remote island.
Yeah, it's in someone's backyard in near Atlanta. It's got 16,000 pythons in it. So...
Why is this such a problem in Florida?
Why? Because the Everglades are an ideal environment, habitat for Burmese pythons. They're a tropical snake.
So
they're not going to live in Chicago.
I get that they're not going to live in Chicago, but
Pets
there's
that were released.
Oh.
Yeah, people buy these stupid snakes, and then they get too large for them to care for, and they release them into the wild.
Species.
Don't call the snakes stupid. God made them.
Well, then why are we euthanizing 16,000 of them?
Because they don't belong in South Florida.
Exactly.
They have no natural predators, although they did find one that had been killed by a bobcat. And they said it was one of the first examples of a native species killing
Fighting
the invasive
back.
species.
But there's other parts of the South that are warm enough.
Not tropical.
But not tropical.
tropical.
Okay.
Not tropical.
Right.
Did you see some of the other strategies they've used?
No. Tell me.
Apparently, the men are dumber. And they put...
The men pythons?
The men pythons.
They're not man pythons. They're male. There's a difference.
Apparently, they put trackers on the male snakes because they'll lead them to the largest... They're looking for the largest female that will lay the most eggs. Because apparently, they lay 100 eggs every year.
That's too many.
And
so that's why you get so many pythons.
So they use the men to find the women and kill the women.
What's wrong with that?
The female
Well, that's like
snakes.
advertising. Well, we do the opposite. We put the women,
and then we kill the men.
Drape them on the car.
Yeah.
And it lures the men, and then we kill the men.
We do that.
We do that. Send them to a preserve outside Atlanta.
Sometimes you gotta.
Oh, but here, okay. Sermon illustration.
Oh, I knew this was coming.
Sermon illustration, we've flipped Eden on its head.
That's what I was thinking.
We are now tempting the snake.
Yeah.
You want this rabbit, don't you? Huh? Oh, God told me if I eat that rabbit, I will surely die. You will not die. Did God say that? You will become like God if you eat this rabbit, oh serpent.
Ooh.
Nice.
Ooh.
So what's the application exactly?
Just what I said.
Incredible. Wow.
So I can teach that. I could teach that to kids.
That's great.
Totally. They'd love robo-bunnies.
Robo-bunnies died for our sins.
Oh my. Okay.
No? Do I need to stop now?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Stuff is happening everywhere. Everywhere stuff is happening. Everywhere. The Secretary of Defense retweeted a CNN segment about Pastor Doug Wilson. Don't know if you saw this. It's like an 8-minute CNN segment. Doug Wilson, we talked about him a lot. He's from Moscow, Idaho. He ended up starting kind of a quasi association of churches, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, goes to one of those affiliated churches. And among other things, this segment included the belief of Doug Wilson's church that women should not have the right to vote, that women's suffrage should be reversed. Mm-hmm. And then there should be one vote per household, and the vote should be held by a man.
So what if a woman lives with just women in a household?
Like me.
That's tricky.
Do they get a vote in that regard?
That's like who? Yeah, I don't know. Is it like
the manliest woman?
One vote per street address? Because then singles would have an outsized
that is so
say.
True. That's
would
so
be,
true.
yeah. But see, I guess in his ideal America, there would be no single people living alone.
No childless cat ladies.
Right.
I'm not sure how you pull that off.
I know either.
Well, you set up these robo-bunnies.
What about...
And the single people say, oh, I want a bunny. And you got
What if a woman chooses...
Humanely euthanize them.
What if a woman changes her gender?
Oh.
Which is not uncommon these days.
I don't want to talk about that, Scott.
But would that man, that trans man now get to vote?
Wow, we're really
I'm
going
to
down a rabbit trail
say
there.
Pete Hegseth probably doesn't want that to be the case. He retweeted the video, and above it, he just simply said, all of Christ for all of life. That was his...
All of Christ for all of life.
Yeah, which is something that...
Is that like a Christian nationalist motto?
It's something that Doug Wilson says. I think it's a Moscow, Idaho.
Because on its surface...
That seems true.
It sounds great.
Yeah.
But the way it's being applied here sounds really...
Well, and coming from the Secretary of Defense, it seems a little...
Yeah.
Like, what? How does that affect how you're going to manage the armed forces?
And he has a significant number of...
Crusader tattoos.
No, not... I was going to say, he
Children?
oversees a significant number of women in the armed forces.
Yeah.
And
not as many as there used to be.
That is also true. But it seems like if he doesn't believe women should vote, he also probably doesn't think they should be serving in the military.
That would seem pretty reasonable.
Right?
Yeah.
He did make that statement, or they shouldn't be in combat.
Yeah.
That had been his prior position, that women shouldn't be in combat, and then he wanted to end that. But he's backed down on that because he met women in combat that were very angry with them.
What is it, the 27th Amendment? Which amendment lowered the voting age to 18?
Are there 27 amendments? How many amendments are there?
Well, there was some argument that said that if you're old enough to be drafted into war, you should be old enough to vote.
26.
Right.
26th Amendment.
Unless you're a woman.
But if we allow women to be in the armed forces,
We don't want them to.
No,
So
but
then
I'm
we're
not saying
consistent.
combat roles, just in the armed forces
At
at
all, yeah.
all.
But we know we need nurses.
Yeah, but my point is, if you're serving the country in that kind of capacity,
Think you should be able to vote?
I think you should probably be able to vote.
Yeah,
That
I don't.
seems-
I don't see an anti-woman suffrage movement getting very far.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't even think you need to serve in the military as a woman to be able to vote.
Well,
so.
I don't know about that. Maybe. No, but my point is, he's the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah,
You would think
yeah.
he would have some consistent views on these things.
That's a high bar, Sky.
When you're a Fox News host, before you...
Let's be fair. He wasn't a very good Fox News host.
No, well, does that mean he would have a more organized?
That's what I'm saying. Maybe we lower
Thoughts?
our expectations.
We have certainly lowered our expectations. Archbishop of Miami, Thomas Wensky, has succeeded in, he joined the Archdiocese of Miami, has at last been able to minister to detainees in the Alligator Alcatraz detention center. More than welcome good news for detainees. It also proves that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement can be held accountable when religious leaders bring pressure. So it was reported by Religion News Service on July 22nd that there were protests at Alligator Alcatraz because the detainees were being denied access to religious services. And this is from the administration that has a committee on religious freedom, that we want to make sure no one is having their religious freedom violated. And they were violating religious freedom. And they actually backed down. The Trump administration's immigration enforcement has opened a new moment in Catholic activism in the United States. The Miami Archbishop joined the protest, calling attention to how detainees in Alligator Alcatraz are being denied access to religious services. So, minor victory. Minor, if you're in Alligator Alcatraz, which you should not be, you can at least have a priest come in and minister the sacraments.
But this is part of ICE's own policy.
Yeah.
Which?
that detainees within ICE custody have a right to access religious services.
Yes.
It's that they were violating their own policy.
Yes.
And
yes,
this archbishop called them out on it. The courts, did the courts intervene or say something?
I don't know if it went to court, if it got that far, but okay. So I got to back up a little because
it did.
It did go that far. See, if Kaitlyn wasn't here in person, I wouldn't know that now.
So true.
Because I wouldn't have noticed you trying to say something over there on the TV screen.
I'm glad I can make a fuss now.
But now I can't even look at Sky without seeing you.
Haha. Oh, the things I'm going to say now.
I know. You are no longer in my peripheries. You are center. So Doug Wilson, Moscow, Idaho, is also the epicenter, kind of the headwaters of the sin of empathy movement.
Yes.
Naming a detention center with a cute, funny name, would you say that's a sign of compassion? And it really strikes me because because it would be funny if that was just like somebody nicknamed it that. We call it Alligator, Alcatraz.
If it was the South Florida ICE Detention Center.
Number 17.
Right.
Yeah. But that's its real name. That is what the Trump administration named it. And they put up signs that say that on it. And MAGA folks are stopping and posing in front of the signs to say thumbs up on Alligator, Alcatraz. And they're building another detention center now that will also have a cute, funny name.
The Python Penitentiary?
No, it's not in Florida. Oh. It's in a different state.
Isn't this just the memification of our government?
Well, even if you want memes, I can't see George Bush saying, we're going to hold people here, and it's really unfortunate that we have to do that. So let's give it a really funny name. Or I can't see George Bush flying to El Salvador and posing thumbs up in front of a extrajudicial detention facility, prison, and a site of abuse. But yet that's where we are. And to me, okay, I've had this question all along, and this is what I was debating with my MAGA friend. Why are MAGA Christians, strong Trump supporters who are also Christians, so much more comfortable with cruelty than I would think Christians would be? And of course, his response was, that's wrong. We're not. You're just looking at it wrong. You're looking at it backwards.
This isn't really cruel.
Yeah, because we're being kind to American citizens by protecting them from dangerous immigrants.
So to be kind towards the people in our group, we must be cruel to people outside our group.
Yeah.
It's a zero-sum kind of thing that for one group to excel, the other must be torn down.
So here's the deal. My question has been, if it seems like Trump supporting Christians, many, not all, some are just, I vote for Republicans and he's the Republican. I cannot vote for Democrats, so I have to vote for Republican. And I get that. I respect that. But it seems like many of the people I interact with, particularly on Twitter,
that might be part of the problem,
lack compassion and are more callous towards others than Christians I know that don't support Trump. And I thought, is that the case? Is that actually true? Or do we just disagree over how best to show love to others? And we've got our answer, Sky Jitani and Kaitlyn Shess. They're less compassionate. There was a psychological study done reporting Trump supporters score higher in levels of psychopathy, manipulativeness, callousness, and narcissism. A new psychological study has found that people who report favorable views of Donald Trump also tend to score higher on measures of callousness and lower on empathy and compassion. Malevolent personality traits, sometimes called dark traits, include tendencies such as manipulativeness, callousness, narcissism, and a lack of empathy.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
We've known for a while, since 2016, that more men vote for Donald Trump and more women tend to vote for the Democratic candidate. That's just been a trend for a while now. Is it simply the case that these personality disorders are more prevalent in men?
They've controlled for gender.
Oh.
They've controlled for gender, they've controlled for ethnicity, they've controlled for socioeconomic status. Study author Craig Newman, a Regents professor of psychology at the University of North Texas. The researchers conducted a researcher in Texas.
What's so surprising about that, Phil?
He might have to leave. The researchers conducted 2 large surveys with a total of 9,000 participants in the United States. The findings consistently showed that people who identified as politically conservative, and especially those who rated Trump's presidency highly, were more likely to score higher on measures of authoritarianism, social dominance, and malevolent personality traits. They found that people who reported stronger benevolent traits, such as valuing the dignity and worth of others, were more likely to hold liberal views and reject Trump. People who reported more malevolent traits were more likely to support Trump and identify as conservative. While both men and women showed this pattern, the associations were stronger among men.
Yeah,
Men were more likely, you could tell who they would vote for by where they scored.
Well, yeah, in my limited knowledge of these things, these personality traits are more common among men. There's more male sociopaths than women.
They are, but still, men that scored higher on empathy are less likely to support Trump.
Okay.
So it still holds true. Supporters of Trump were less likely to feel concern for others' suffering, lower affective empathy, and more likely to enjoy or be indifferent to others' distress, higher dissonant empathy. Importantly, these differences were not found in cognitive empathy, which means Trump supporters, and this is average, not all, Trump supporters were just as able as others to recognize emotions in others. They simply, and this is the psychologists talking that did the study, they simply appeared to care less on average.
Okay, so my question is,
which came first?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's where I'm getting with this. The findings did not mean that all Trump supporters are manipulative or lack compassion, nor that all non-supporters are empathetic or benevolent. Individuals within each group vary widely, and the results reflect differences in average tendencies, not universal characteristics. But if it feels like, on average, the Trump supporters you're interacting with are less compassionate, data supports that claim. So here's my question. Is Trump affecting the compassion of conservatives, or is he simply attracting people who lack compassion who are now identifying as conservative?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what's the answer?
I don't know.
Kaitlyn?
I'm asking Kaitlyn.
Well, I haven't read all of this deeply, but I'm curious by what standard they determined conservative political ideology, because according to at least parts of this, it looks like the main determiner was positive view of Trump, which is different than just saying you have largely conservative political views, historically conservative political. To your point about George Bush earlier, like that's a different.
Right.
So
compassionate conservatism.
Right. I don't know that this is totally true, but I would be very curious just what else besides positive view of Trump, which is the only thing listed in this one paragraph, they use to determine conservative political views. Because my guess would be this is more saying something about people who are enthusiastic about Trump than it is saying something about people who are generally politically conservative. The other thing that I think is interesting about this is not just the question of like, does he just attract those kind of people, but what traits in people are emphasized or nurtured by their political affiliation that maybe were less dominant in their personality prior to their not only involvement with Trumpian politics, but especially their involvement with like social media communities of people who are super Trumpy. Like, how did their political participation in various forms over the last couple election seasons shape their personalities? Right. I don't know enough about psychology to know how many of these personality traits are like innate in someone versus can be nurtured. But I also don't know how much a study might also be picking up on just what things are you emphasizing currently as opposed to what you might emphasize in a different context.
It's interesting to apply this to people who've been in the public eye for more than the last 10 years. Look at Marco Rubio, for example. Back in 2016, when he was running against Trump for the nomination, he was trying to be a normie Republican, a more compassionate, conservative, George W. Bush-ish type of Republican. And he got decimated by Trump. And fast forward to today, and he's a Trump acolyte. And he's parroting a lot of the same talking points and cruelty that Trump says. So you can see the transformation in somebody because of this movement who wants to be successful. Yeah. That's got to be at play with non-political actors as well, just average people who get swept up into this movement, who may have been your average good-natured American citizen, but has gotten so immersed in this subculture where what's celebrated and valued looks like cruelty that they just go along with it.
Yeah. See, I wonder if we have a movement of conservatism, or rather we have a movement of self-interest. You know, we have because Trump is supremely self-interested. Yeah. There is nothing beyond Trump, and you will do well if he redefines his self-interest to include you. You know, and so parts of America, real America, he is redefined as part of his sphere of self-interest. I'm wondering if what is happening is effectively Trump sorting the church by level of compassion. In that, because there are a whole lot of people that would have been and are claimed to be conservative Christians, and in years past, you know, donated to support missions, support lots of things. But many of them were carried into this relatively easily, and others were not. And I'm wondering if one of the things that made that decision point, you know, are you a David French or are you a Robert Jeffress? You know, or is some innate level of empathy or compassion?
I mean, it's a good question. I wonder if it's actually a layer deeper than that.
Yeah.
Oh. What's deeper than compassion?
I think self-differentiation. And what I mean by that is, I don't want to speak for David French, but he comes to mind, or Russell Moore for that matter. If you have a very strong sense of identity, of who you are and what you stand for, or whose you are in the case of being a Christian, then when the rest of the community around you starts going in a different direction, you're able to stand against that and say, I'm not going to go with my community here because I know who I am and what I believe. People who are not highly self-differentiated get their sense of identity from their surroundings, from their community. And so when their community starts going in a certain direction, they just go with the flow. They go with everyone else because they need that sense of acceptance and belonging. So if the community starts going in the direction of MAGA, Trumpism, and a degree of cruelty, you justify that by saying, I'm not being cruel. I'm just being more compassionate towards the people that I'm supposed to be compassionate toward. Yeah. I'm protecting American citizens from the invaders who are coming in with drugs and, you know, they're raping and murdering everybody. That's the rhetoric you get. And it justifies cruelty against those people in the name of compassion and loving my immediate neighbor.
Except that they score lower on compassion.
I know, but that's my point, is over time, your compassion gets hedged in tighter and tighter and tighter.
Yeah.
So you get a lower score. But I don't think it's that they're compassionate or not compassionate. I think it's about self-differentiation and identity, and how much of that you're dependent on your community for, and how much do you have intrinsically or in your communion with Christ, to put spiritual language on it.
Kaitlyn, tell him he's wrong.
Well, I don't want to be like Sky and hear about a scientific study and be like, this isn't true. But I am skeptical of this only because I want to be skeptical of reporting or data or whatever that just confirms my sense that I'm a good person and other people are just bad people. And I worry that people listening or people who will see reporting on this are just going to go, oh, this confirms what I've been thinking, which is that like I'm just a naturally good person and those other people are just naturally bad people.
In my own defense, I've had this story for 4 weeks and I keep not doing it. Because they're like, is this confirmation bias?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think it can be really helpful in terms of the conversation we were having earlier about like who gets drawn into what kind of political movements, how do people get shaped over time. But I do worry that there are a lot of people on the left who just kind of go, well, that's what divides me from the right. It's like, I'm a good person who cares about other people. When in reality, I do think most of the people I interact with who voted for Trump, even a lot of the people I interact with who are really enthusiastic about Trump, to Sky's point, have a very different way of evaluating different values and needs. And they think they're being really compassionate. And I think that many, not all, but many are genuine in that. And the dynamic we were describing earlier of like getting to this place where you can mock other people, because I genuinely think a lot of the people who are mocking the undocumented immigrants, or even the not undocumented immigrants that are being pulled in by ICE right now, is because they think like this cause is just, and the disaster happening right now is so intense. You have to kind of, you got to break some eggs to make an omelet. That mentality I see on the left all the time too. Not nearly as disastrous of results right now because of where political power is situated. But I think the idea that you might just look at this and go, I'm just a good person, they're just not good people. Right. That's what puts you in a really scary place of, I'm just so inherently good. If I was under the conditions they were under, of having more political power, of believing the stakes are so high, I would still use it really well. And in reality, you wouldn't. It honestly, Skye and I did a Getting Schooled about Christian realism a while ago. And Reinhold Niebuhr, one of his kind of big early books was The Children of Light and the Children of Darkness. And he's writing this, post a couple of world wars and, some pretty serious disasters. And he's critical of the progressives who think I'm just the unambiguous good guy who will do all the right things. And he actually says, as a Christian, he thinks you should be more suspicious of the people who pretend to be acting in everyone's best interest than you should of the people who are blatantly self-interested, because at least you know what those people are doing. Right, the other ones aren't even aware of their own sinfulness, and that's who's really dangerous. And that's where I just think some of this, interpreted in the wrong way or in the wrong hands of people, that's how you end up with like swinging in the other direction and just as bad things happening, because you've convinced yourself, I can't do anything bad. I'm just an inherently good person.
Okay, so let's say we're not going to do that.
Yeah, great.
Okay, and let's say none of our listeners are going to do that.
I hope so.
Okay, because I honestly don't think that way. I honestly think some people are innately, we all have varying levels of varying traits.
Yeah.
And the ability to really feel for someone, or to declare, actually, feeling for someone too much is a huge problem in our society. I think there's something innate about that.
It's important to remember, no one thinks they're evil.
Right.
No one thinks they're being cruel.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks they're on the side of good. For the most part. Recently,
on one of David French's podcasts, Sarah Isker made that statement, and David French disagreed and says in some of his interactions online, he is bumping into people who are simply enjoying being cruel.
That may be.
Very, very rarely.
That may be. Yeah. And they probably are the ones that register as sociopaths in these surveys, but that's not the norm.
Yeah.
And most people think they're good, or they're on the side of good, or the movement they're a part of is the righteous, just, good thing. And they have some rationale for it.
Yep.
And when you come as an outsider and go, no, actually you're evil and you're cruel and you're mean and you're unchristian, like it just shuts them down immediately. And that's where we get into the polarization in our societies. But it doesn't mean this is what gets me worked up is not the average person who gets swept up into the movement on the right or the movement on the left. It shows you how much power and influence our church leaders have, our media figures have, journalists have, our political leaders have. And when you have people in those significant positions of influence deliberately misleading, misreporting, manipulating people's perspectives, that I find to be the egregious sin here. Because when you tell people, and I've ran into someone recently who really believed this, when you tell people for literally a decade that there is an invasion of drug dealers and rapists coming across the southern border, and that's all they hear in their media consumption, they don't think they're being cruel to undocumented immigrants. They think they're protecting innocent people in America from drugs and rape and murder and all kinds of terrible things. I would believe that too if I consumed the same media they consumed all day long. The fault there doesn't lie with the person who's caught up in the movement. The fault is with those who are profiting off of telling them that false narrative.
Okay.
That's the problem here, is we have so many false narratives being spun for political purposes, for financial purposes, for whatever purposes. And those are the people that are destroying our sense of community in this country.
Okay, so we do need to wrap it up because we're running out of time. What do we do with a study that seems to suggest that people who are fond of the Trump administration score lower in compassion and empathy than people who are opposed to the Trump administration. Do we ignore it? What do we do? Is it not relevant?
I like Kaitlyn said, I haven't looked into methodology or the study or the source.
I have some questions about that.
But my gut says the things we align ourselves with are formative. They have an influence on us. And if you, for 10 years, have immersed yourself in the MAGA movement, I wouldn't be surprised if you score lower on issues of empathy and compassion, because these movements and their rhetoric and the way they treat people who are different are going to have a negative impact on you. There are examples of this on the extreme left as well. Right? Yeah. So I just think we need to be more discerning and careful of who we are allowing to shape our vision of our neighbors.
Kaitlyn.
Yeah, I mean, while I was reading some of this, I was thinking, as Sky was talking to, about like, people are not going to change if you just throw your evil at them. And I can just imagine someone listening and going like, read the prophets. Like, they have such harsh condemnations of people who are acting unjustly and often similar patterns of like, you're not treating other people like people and you're self-interested and I think it's important to actually go back and read the prophets, because sometimes we just Google like verse against rich people and then like pull that verse and stick it on social media. If you actually read the prophets in whole books and like look at the lives of particular prophets, I'm partial to Jeremiah, you notice how heartbroken they are over what the people are doing. Like, it's not always explicit, but there does seem to both be a sense, to Sky's point, that people have given themselves over to idolatry, but at some point that has done something so deeply harmful to them that that's why they're acting in this way. There's a recognition that, I mean, this is just good biblical anthropology. Like, you were made good and something was distorted and corrupted in you, and that's heartbreaking. And the prophets so often are spending their lives trying to tell the people what they're doing wrong, but it's not coming from this place of like, I'm high above you wagging a finger. It's coming from a place of like, I actually think the way you are treating other people does something bad to you, and I want you to live a flourishing life, just like I want the people you're oppressing to live a flourishing life. This is harmful to both of you in different ways, but it's really harmful to both of you, and I'm heartbroken over it. And I worry that there are some of us in like broader American evangelicalism right now that feel like we have to pick between being compassionate to people who believe differently than us on some of these really important things with big stakes. And it all ends up just being, well, you believe what you believe and I believe what I believe, and it doesn't really matter who you voted for, what policies you support. Or we feel like we either have to do that in the name of compassion towards other people, or we have to be the prophet, wagging our finger and constantly telling everyone what terrible thing they're doing. And the prophets themselves actually did both. They cared deeply enough about people to tell them the truth. And also, importantly for us, they were actually speaking on behalf of God in a way that we are not. So we can go to their words to get a sense for how God would have human communities function. But we should be a little wary, like the prophets often were. They were often scared that God was telling them to say something that was scary. They didn't feel like they had the authority to say it very often. We should have some appropriate humility about it. And also a recognition that if we're going to say something hard to people about how they're treating other people, it should come from a place of being heartbroken over what's happening to them.
Yeah, agreed. I agree.
Good.
Okay. Do you agree? Was this a silly story to bring up? That's okay if you think that. I just, yeah. It caught my eye, and it is hard data. Is it questionable data? I don't know. Check it out. You can check it out. We post our stories in the show notes. Right, Mike?
Yes.
Yes, so you can check it out. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for subscribing to HOLYPOST Plus, where you get lots of content from Kaitlyn, who now lives in Wheaton, Illinois. Yay! And who's the other guy? Sky Jitani.
The other guy.
Yay! Who also lives in Wheaton, Illinois. Yay!
Yeah, but that's not news.
And needs a new air conditioner.
Furnace.
But you're...
The blower.
The blower died.
The blower motor died.
The blower motor. Can they just do the blower motor?
They can, but it's a 20-plus-year-old furnace.
Oh,
and it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. So you just get the whole new thing. You just need to get a whole new thing. Yeah. Isn't that the way? Our motor died on our washing machine. And a new motor was the exact same cost.
Just old men complaining.
I literally was like, we should do a whole episode about your home repairs. People would love that.
A new motor was the exact same price as a new washing machine. Oh, what do you know? I guess we'll get a new washing machine. And there it is. So in conclusion, subscribe to HOLYPOST Plus, and you'll learn a lot. And we'll see you next week. Bye. The Holy Post is sponsored by BetterHelp. We are living in crazy times, and that can be hard on your mental health. Plus, relationship stress, parenting, marriage, and work stress, it all adds up. Well, don't try to handle all this on your own. You can get help from trained professionals. But the economy and tariffs and the price of eggs, adding therapy onto all that feels like a huge investment, and the cost of traditional in-person therapy can be huge, costing anywhere from $100 to $250 per session. Online therapy with BetterHelp can save you, on average, up to 50% for each session. BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served more than 5 million people around the world. It's easy, too. You can join a session with the click of a button to help fit therapy into your busy life. And you can switch therapists at any time. You can do better than just survive these crazy times. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/HolyPost today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/HolyPost. Today's episode is sponsored by Our Place. You're trying to eat healthy, right? Are you trying to cook healthy? I mean, is your cookware part of the problem? Most cookware still contains harmful forever chemicals, where a single scratch on a non-stick coated pan can release 9,000 particles of plastic into your food and into you. Our Place makes high-performance, toxin-free cookware. You can cook without worrying that the coating on your pan is going to end up in you. Plus, the cookware from Our Place is gorgeous. Great design, awesome colors. You've got to check it out. Our Place has a 4-piece cookware set that can overhaul your entire kitchen. The set includes 2 multifunction always pans and 2 perfect pots in mini and full sizes that replace a whole stack of cookware, and buying them together saves you $150. So stop cooking with toxic cookware and upgrade to Our Place today. Visit FromOurPlace.com/HolyPost and use code HOLYPOST for 10% off site-wide. With a 100-day risk-free trial and free shipping and returns, you can experience this game-changing cookware with 0 risk.
Trust in institutions has been declining for decades. There's at least 2 reasons for this. First, with the development of digital technology, many of the things that we used to rely upon institutions for, we're now able to do all by ourselves. This has made us more autonomous, separate, and less connected to many of the institutions that previous generations built their lives and communities around. The second reason is that many of our institutions have abused our trust. Scandals in government, education, business, and the church have eroded our confidence that these institutions are worth our time and treasure. Obviously, we've talked a ton about the problems facing the American church, and particularly the evangelical subculture. Literally every day I see another story on social media about a church scandal or cover-up. So it's understandable why so many people feel like participating in a local church may not be worth the risk. But our guest today argues that is a mistake. Brad Edwards says that we still need institutional churches, and while there are plenty of problems that need to be addressed, he says we've become so fixated on the potential for abuse that many of us are sabotaging our own ability to engage with a church and benefit from what a spiritual community is supposed to be. In a way, we've created a vicious cycle that's only compounding our distrust of institutional churches. His new book is called The Reason for Church: Why the Body of Christ Still Matters in an Age of Anxiety, Division, and Radical Individualism. Brad Edwards is the church planter of the Table Church in Lafayette, Colorado. He's a regular contributor to Mere Orthodoxy and the Gospel Coalition, and he co-hosts the Post Everything podcast. We also have a bonus interview with Brad exclusively for HOLYPOST Plus subscribers. So don't miss that if you are a subscriber, and if not, head over to holypost.com to find out how you can join HOLYPOST Plus. Here is Kaitlyn's conversation with Brad Edwards.
Brad Edwards, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
I am so excited to talk about your new book, The Reason for Church, and I love the subtitle, Why the Body of Christ Still Matters in an Age of Anxiety, Division, and Radical Individualism. And I want to hear a little bit at some point about kind of your reason for writing this book, how you came to it. But I feel like most people, they see a book about the church and they're kind of wondering, where are you seeing things at the start? Like how are you seeing how the church is doing now? There's a lot of books about the decline of the church. There's a lot of books about how we're in this surprising revival. There's a lot of books about the death of institutions. And then there's a bunch that are like, actually, young people are really interested in tradition. And so, Brad, just what's your take on like, where are we starting? How are you viewing what's happening with the church right now?
Man, that is a very good question. And I want to start by saying that anybody who states where they think the church is right now with a whole lot of confidence is probably wrong. I would say, the tagline for the podcast that I co-host called Post Everything is remapping culture and rethinking leadership in a liminal age. And that liminal age piece is really important because we are in an age of transition. I think Mark Sayers recently talked about how we are moving from, the Western world is moving from a post-Christian to a post-secular world. And I think that a lot of the different things that you listed as mile markers or symptoms of that transition can fall into one of those two categories. And I think that's a really helpful way of thinking about this. Like, we are in a place of movement and shifting sands underneath our feet. And we're kind of trying to adapt and figure out, like, where are these dots connected? How do we move forward? And I don't know that it's terribly clear yet, because I think all of those things are things that people are seeing, but I think it really depends on where you are and kind of your perspective in the midst of that. So I'm not sure. Yeah. But I would say that there's a whole lot of change happening and going on, and the church is trying to figure out, like, to what degree are we supposed to adapt to this in a really fundamental way? Yeah. Or should we hold the course and be refreshingly strange, in the midst of a world that is looking for something that's transcending, that is able to transcend that change and that liminal age?
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I think another question people probably have right off the bat when it comes to any book about church is sort of like, pro, con, where are you coming from? And it's pretty clear from the title, very pro-church, which people who listen to the podcast know I'm very pro-church. But talk a little bit about why you felt like this kind of book was the book for you to write right now, maybe personally, and maybe why you thought this was the book we needed broadly right now.
Well, first of all, I needed this book. I needed to write this book. I'm a church planter. We've been at it. We launched the table in Boulder County, Colorado, 2 Sundays. We moved to weekly worship 2 Sundays before the 2016 election. So we've had a fun ride. We've not been bored. We haven't had a whole lot of time to breathe even. However, one of the things that was really surprising when we first moved here, and this has been a through line the entire time, and we just saw this amplified during the pandemic, is that our neighbors, and even Christians in a lot of ways, but especially our neighbors, are open to the idea that God exists, and even that they might need Jesus, but they are closed to the idea that the church is beautiful or good for anyone. Yeah. And so that kind of anti-institutional default and starting point was something that actually not just non-Christians, our neighbors, but also Christians who are coming in the front doors of our church, they shared. And for the Christians, they kind of viewed the church as a glorified kind of spiritual nonprofit. Yeah. And so it's a place where, we know that we're not supposed to be as consumeristic as our boomer parents. I'm an elder millennial. And so we're like, well, okay, we know that we shouldn't be coming for McMinistry, right? Yeah. Yeah. However, Gen X, millennials, and younger, we are actually coming in with this default assumption of self-actualization. And we think that the purpose of the Christian life is to continue to grow into our God-given potential and who God has made us to be. And while that's not wrong, that's actually not the purpose of the church. Yeah. That's actually the fruit of being involved in a church, but that's not, that can't be our motivation. Until we actually get underneath the surface and start questioning some of those assumptions of individualism, we're not able to do the thing that the church is for, which is to fully worship God, to be about his glory and our neighbor's good.
I love that. I quite often think about a conversation I had with someone a solid generation older than me who was thinking about, she was considering baptism. She was in a church and she was trying to figure out, and her big question was, did Jesus Christ actually rise from the dead? If he did, then I'm all in, and whatever the church teaches, I will do, and I'll submit to anything. If he didn't, I'm out. And she was talking to me about some of the younger students at the divinity school at Duke. And she was like, who there is asking? Like, what's the historical evidence for Jesus's resurrection? And I was like, no one. Like, most of the young MDiv students at Duke are going, is the church good? Is it moral? Yeah. And can I be involved in it? And that's such a different framing. And you start out the book talking about this kind of different kind of apologetic. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about, like, as you were just saying, what it means now to encounter people who might be increasingly spiritual and even might have grown up in the church. I think a lot of people listening to the podcast are like, I'm a Christian and I, really care about following what Jesus says. But like, I need to be convinced about the church.
Yeah. Well, and I totally get that. That's got to be 95% of the people who come through our doors on a Sunday morning, including people who've been there for a while even. And I hope what this book does is lay out truly a hopeful vision for the church, but one that is also extremely realistic.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't think you'd have to live under a rock not to be aware of all of the examples that kind of multiply through social media of institutional abuse, spiritual abuse, abuse of power, position, corruption, et cetera. Right. Like we are all hyper aware of those things in ways that actually make it more difficult to see. Even if we like, let's set aside the goal of seeing the church as good or beautiful, right? Let's just start with should the church exist at all, and why? What is its purpose?
Yeah.
Right. And part of the problem is we're all fish swimming in this individualistic water that sees autonomy and freedom as the highest possible moral good.
Yeah.
And we are not aware, and we don't celebrate the stories of where self-constraint or submission, and I know that I'm using the S word here.
Yeah,
that's a negative word, but where that actually can be flourishing for human beings. And so I know you've talked a lot about on the Holy Post about how we desperately need a bigger, more robust biblical anthropology.
Yeah,
and without that, we are actually completely unable to navigate some of these technological challenges in a modern era. But I think a huge part of that is we actually have to recover the good of an institution and what institutions do in a positive way, and why they're actually you can't actually talk about an institution as a thing or outside of it also being people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because an Yuval Levin, a political scientist and commentator, he describes institutions as the durable forms of our common life. And if we are in an age of transition, a liminal age, we need durable forms of our common life. Like, I don't think anyone can disagree with that. But there are also all kinds of different institutions, and especially those that form and shape us to deepen and mature and grow us. And there is no growing without them. We will either grow within an institution and flourish, or we will be co-opted and deformed and mouse-shaped by the technology and other counterfeit institutions in the world around us.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I cannot tell you how often I have conversations with, especially young people who say, I might be into a church possibly, but not like the institutional form. Like I just want to be in community with people. And I do love the idea of the potluck but at some point in the conversation, they'll always say, but like, yeah, I'm worried about abuse of power. So I want there to be accountability. And I'm like, yeah, okay. You need an institution for that. Like you can't just be hanging out forever. At some point, there are questions about who gets to call out who and the way that we live together, the kind of rules that we follow. And that doesn't feel as organic, but a lot of us, once the rubber meets the road, it's really necessary. One of the parts of the book that I just was underlining so many parts of because it was putting things together for me that I had never made the connection myself is your chapter on the sacred self, where you connect, which we've talked about on the show before, kind of therapy speak, not professional therapy with a therapist, but just the language that we have all learned mostly from the internet, divorced from any like clinical context or actual definition, but just the way we've learned to talk about our relationships with each other, how that impacts how we view the church. And it was so striking to me because I've seen this over and over again, where people want to be so safe from harm that they actually need to be completely isolated from community because everyone is a threat to them. Talk a little bit more about how that kind of the individualism, but especially this like therapy speak kind of culture that we live in has influenced how we negatively view the church.
Man, yeah. Well, I think what makes therapy speak so understandable as something that we latch onto and don't even realize a lot of people don't even realize that that's what's happening. Like we're not consciously opting into so many of these different, what I call church defeaters, these beliefs or assumptions that are precluding or making it more difficult to attach to and commit to a church, right? But therapy speak in particular is really difficult because it's actually putting voice and words to the individualistic impulses that we've been swimming around in, that I've been talking about earlier, right? And so it's kind of a two-step process, right? So the first is what Tara Isabella Burton in her book Strange Rights, which is outstanding,
great book,
calls intuitionism, right? And this is this idea, and this has always been a stream in American and Western culture, that my intuition and my internal reality is the most reliable spiritual guide for navigating life's challenges and understanding what is ultimately true, good, and beautiful. And so that's just in our culture, right? It's in Disney. It's in all the stories we tell. It's in the appeals for every marketing ad. Like, that is Americanism, if there is one, right? But the second is this therapy speak that functions almost as a catechism. You wrote a great book on the liturgy of politics, right? And it's operating in a similar way. Yeah. That the more that we use it, and especially because we can use it anytime we log on to TikTok or Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, right? We are catechizing ourselves spiritually to a framework that views safety and internal peace as the highest good. And when we do so, when that is the highest good, and again, not more biblically, those are good things. Yeah. They're not the best things, and they're not the telos of the human life. They are the byproduct of living in the kingdom, of living and following Jesus and entrusting ourselves to him. And so when we are catechized by that, it actually makes the things that threaten our safety and our peace that much more powerful, because we start to organize our lives and our intuitions, and then therefore our hearts and our affections and our desires all around those threats as a preventative measure, and it becomes an anti-vision. It becomes it's not for flourishing, it's against harm, and that doesn't actually flourish us at all.
Yeah. It's even listening to you talk, I'm realizing whatever kind of end of the political spectrum you're on, you can see this on the other end really easily.
Yes.
Like, you're so obsessed with safety and security and protecting yourself. It's just different threats on either side, but it's really hard to see it on your side because those feel like legitimate threats, and the threats on the other side are not legitimate. But both have been catechized by, the media they consume, by the communities they're in, to kind of go, what most matters is me being safe from either the wrong kind of people or the wrong kind of language or the wrong kind of institution, and that's what will keep me good and give me a flourishing life. And both ends want to say, oh no, there's risk that actually can bring great flourishing, just different kinds of risk. And
the populism is the purest political form of individualism that we have in the Western world. It bar none. Yeah. But of course, that is exactly what we would gravitate towards if we've so abandoned institutions that are designed to anchor us and help and be a refuge in the midst of transition and instability. Yeah. Of course, we're going to see populist waves on the far left and right, because that's the only means we have left for finding safety and refuge. That's why we need institutions. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. And it relates, you were just talking about the format where we learn this kind of speak and we're catechized in these kinds of ways. And a few minutes ago, you talked about counterfeit institutions. Talk a little bit more about that, because there are a lot of people who listen to the Holy Post, I was telling you this earlier, who will say, this is my new church. Or they'll say to me at an event, you're kind of like my pastor. And I appreciate a couple of things about what they're doing. They're saying, like, I want community and I want leadership. I want some kind of spiritual guidance, and I have been hurt in other institutions, and so I'm seeking some new form that I think is safer. And yet every time anyone says either of those things to me, I'm just like heartbroken and frustrated, because I'm not their pastor. I've never met them. I think your pastor needs to have met you. And we're not a church. We're not embodied community. We don't have the sacraments. So talk to us a little bit about social media and those counterfeit institutions and how they've shaped us. I'm especially curious even how they've shaped us even when we do show up in an in-person community.
Oh, man. Well, to maybe answer the first question, or the last question first, I still remember it was early February of 2020 that I first hopped onto Twitter. Prior to that, I was on. Timing. I know. Yeah, that is. I have regrets. Yeah. I was on Facebook prior to that, but when we planted the church, Facebook used to be a really good place to actually engage with my neighbors and have some good conversations. Yeah. And there's, like, as much as you can say someone might have like a local internet ministry, I did. And it was really helpful. But the more that, when Christians came to our church and I added them on Facebook, that changed my algorithm and my news feed. And I stopped seeing my non-Christian neighbors and it became useless for me. So I hopped onto Twitter. And I remember when I was on there for like the first day and just being like, oh, this is where all of this stuff is coming from.
Yeah.
Because downstream of Twitter, I was hearing complaints or objections or concerns or questions from people who were coming to the table, but I'm like, I don't know where you're getting this. I don't actually fully understand how you're hearing this from me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's because social media had been shaping their filter, and that was what they were hearing me through an algorithmic filter.
Yes.
That was as potent in person as it was on their news feed. That is, we have to be aware of that. Yeah. And I wish I could say every pastor should get off social media, but actually it's going to be really hard to it.
Yeah.
That's where culture's coming from right now. Yeah. And I wish that weren't the case, but that's the reality. Now, as far as how is that shaping us? Why is this a problem? Mark Zuckerberg, right before they took took Facebook public, he had a kind of State of the Union letter that he sent out to everybody about Facebook and about the company. And there was a quote in there that he said that I put in the book where he said that our goal is to fundamentally change the way that people relate to institutions and society itself. That was in 2012, I think.
Wow.
And I would say that has been successful.
Yeah.
And part of the way he's done that is it's basically like Facebook or whatever the social media is. It is an institution stripped down to its studs, right? All of the meat of an institution is taken out in order to make it more efficient and frictionless. Then it's digitized, and so it's just the mere connection. And so there's some benefits to that, right? You become aware of everything that's going on in the world at almost instantaneous speeds, and there's some real benefits to that. But what it does is it gives you the feeling of being connected without any of the depth that forms you, and that gets replaced with an algorithm. And so just like any other counterfeit, what they're doing is they're actually sucking the value from an ecosystem in order to profit from it, but uncaring about what the damage that it does in the wake. And I mean, we can talk about Jonathan Haidt and all of the research that he has put together, but this is not good for us. And I think that might have, I think you could make an argument that there was a lot more good early on before the news feeds went algorithmic. But I think since then, that's just, it's an equation, yes, but that's actually a different narrative that we are being shaped and formed by. That's not the gospel that rewards and incentivizes not sacrificial love, but outrage and clapback, right? That's not the gospel. But because it's hidden, what's really crazy to me actually is just we trust our social media newsfeed more than institutions.
Totally.
And social media are for-profit companies. So there's something we just have to see this a little bit more clearly if we're going to start to understand how do we actually flourish and survive in this liminal age.
Yeah, I was doing ministry with young adults in their 20s and 30s in Dallas, and I remember so many of them complaining to me that their parents would share these obviously fake articles on Facebook, and they were like, where is the media literacy? It's so dumb. And then those same people would send me TikToks about some from some pastor, some theology thing, and they'd be like, so doesn't this prove everything our church teaches is wrong? And I was like, how do you not see that you're doing the same exact thing? Just because someone was wearing a collar in this video doesn't mean they're an expert. Just because they have a TikTok with 1 million followers doesn't mean you should listen to them. But it was just different markers of what matters. And they could see it with their parents, but they could not see it with themselves.
And to go back to the intuitionism thing, right? That's where the algorithm is so skillfully designed to leverage and take advantage of, because it is able to design and arrange content based on what our internal bespoke sense and definition of what is true, good, and beautiful is operating. That definition we're operating on. And I love Chris Martin, who wrote The Wolf in Our Pockets. He says that social media is designed to deliver us only more deeply into our own desires. And if your desires are fallen and not, let's just say, everything that we would like them to be, it's going to amplify that brokenness and deepen us into that rabbit hole, and it's not going to go well for us.
Yeah. Brad, I think there's probably a few places in this book that some people listening to the Holy Post will bristle at. One of those chapters is about virtuous victimhood. And I'd love to talk about this a little bit, partially because I really struggle with how to talk about how to kind of balance two impulses that I have, which is on one hand to say, people have been really harmed in the church, outside of the church, by institutions, by powerful people. I want to listen to people who have been hurt, and I want to recognize some power imbalances that make things more wrong than I realized that they were sometimes in the past. On the other hand, I have seen some of the dynamics you describe in that chapter where people either want to, they're kind of fighting with each other to be the most disadvantaged. Like, here's the most proof I can possibly have for why I'm the most wronged person in this scenario. I've seen, as someone who experienced like some really significant trauma in the church, sometimes I'll hear people's stories of just miscommunication or just like normal human conflict, and I'll get frustrated that they jump to the language of trauma when I'm like, well, but even as I'm saying that, I'm trying to compare, I'm trying to figure out who has it worse. So talk to us about how we can balance, and I feel like we've talked about this a lot on the show, wanting to say there are real victims of abuse of power, and there are real problems in some churches and institutions. And yet we both have this problem where people think it makes them more virtuous to be a victim. And so they want to paint themselves that way. And I've seen this happen a lot where even if they haven't experienced anything themselves, they're so overcome by all of the stories of abuse and mistreatment that they don't know how to relate to anything except through that lens. They go into every church and just are asking, like, who here is the problem? Who here has the power? They must be the bad guy. Talk to us about how we can balance those, because I want to do both of those things, but it feels like politically, socially, you got to pick one of those two camps to be in.
Yes. Let me say two things as kind of qualifiers here, right?
Yeah.
Number one, I just want to name the fact that there are few topics that are more poorly discussed than this one right now, around especially using the language of empathy, right? And we don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but and secondly, this your question is why this was the last chapter in part 2.
Yeah.
Right? Because in a lot of ways, it's tying together a whole lot of the things that came before. And this is part of the reason why we need institutions really badly, right? Is every human being as an image bearer, when we lack agency in our lives, we need some kind of lever, some kind of mechanism, some way to get other people to see us and to get them to act in our interest, to help us, right? Let's call it 2000, let's just call it pre-2000, right? 20th century. The way that would happen would be within institutions where you are known, where there is a diversity of gifting, resources, opportunities, networking connections, et cetera. Institutions are social capital generators, right? They would help us to navigate this world and overcome challenges and hurdles, right? Just across the board, that is true. Okay. Since then, if we don't have institutions to get other people to act in our interest, or we don't trust them to do so, and so we don't even try anymore, then what is the lever for that? And so in a post-Christian society where compassion and empathy are very high and rightfully very high values, then that's the only shared moral authority we have left. And so we appeal to other people's compassion, and combine this with counterfeit institutions and social media. You see where people are wronged, but you don't see resolution.
Yes.
Right? And so what that does is it creates these incentive structures where we can actually profit. And here's the thing. The hardest part about using compassion as a moral authority is it's really effective. It really works.
Yeah.
But the problem with this is manifold. Number one, we have no actual way of understanding or knowing who actually is deserving of compassion and who are just performing it, right? So we have even less transparency in a counterfeit institution to actually be able to discern that than we do even a huge church, right? Because there are no actual embodied connections necessarily. There might be, but that's not because of social media, right? But number two, it creates incentives for people to never get resolution too.
Yes.
Because if you actually get your problem solved, what then? You're really just gonna like put down that power and that authority?
Yeah.
You're not gonna keep using that in some way? You have to keep actually finding another reason why you've been harmed and maligned in order to actually keep and hold on to that power. And so we never actually experience resolution. It only gets worse. And so that's, I mean, where should we go from there?
Yeah.
Because, and I want to just affirm that and validate that, like, I am not saying, like, don't hear what I'm not saying. I am not saying we shouldn't have compassion for people. I am saying compassion is good.
Yeah.
But it is a terrible moral authority.
Yeah.
It should be a condition of our response, a posture.
Yeah.
But it cannot be the means by which we get other people to act in our interests. Yeah. We need something that actually transcends us and transcends whatever the digital ecosystem we're using to leverage it.
Yeah, no, I've seen this happen online and I've seen it happen in person where you just end up with these competing claims to needing compassion from people and you don't have any standard to go, well, who was harmed, who is owed what kind of thing? Like it just becomes, and then you get into the dynamic that you describe in the book of like, there's just sort of an Olympics to like who can get the biggest claim to being the most mistreated. And I so appreciate what you just said because I've seen this with a lot of my dear friends who have had significant and real harm in the church. Yeah. But there was a lot of, especially on social media, sometimes in person, there was a lot of incentive and kind of social capital for them to talk about that pain in ways that I think really hurt them. Like I saw people who very quickly after something happened in a church were incentivized by social media to talk about really personal details that they hadn't healed from, that they hadn't dealt with, like they hadn't reconciled with people, but even just internally, they hadn't talked to a therapist or a pastor. Or this was their way of dealing with it, was to put it online. They built a platform around it. Then it becomes just something you have to continue, and it hurts them. Like it doesn't lead to their flourishing either. And then they can't. I've seen this in the churches in my area where it's like they don't know how to re-enter a community that actually could be really good and healthy for them because their posture towards the church has to be this really critical posture to keep up the social capital that they've built. And that's just heartbreaking.
This is why I have a really hard time not just viewing Mark Zuckerberg as a Lex Luthor with curly hair, right? Because when he said that he wanted to transform the way people relate to institutions, this is one of the clearest places where that has actually borne fruit.
Yeah.
And the number of pastors that I talk to who say, there is no way for me to actually shepherd and care for this person in the way that they need without me literally pole vaulting them down this path, further down virtuous victimhood, because the way that we see power differentials as inherently harmful makes it impossible for those who actually have the power to act in their interest and to help them and serve them in the way that they need, but maybe not the way that they were looking for.
Yeah.
It makes it impossible for them to act. They're paralyzed. And so it is seizing the gears of the institution in ways that are actually more harmful for people.
Yeah. Yeah. I want us, because we only have a few minutes, to say something positive.
Yeah.
You describe so many really discouraging trends in the book, but the second half of it is about how the church can be an answer to a lot of this. Not a perfect institution, not our savior, but God's gift to us to live in a certain way together. We can talk about so many parts of this, but one of the parts I really want to talk about is the chapter on hospitality, because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. It's one of the things that I think we miss a lot when it comes to the church being an institution, but a different kind of institution than many others. And I love that chapter you talk about some of the Christian history here. So give us a little taste of how the church historically and today can extend that kind of hospitality in a way that responds to some of these trends.
Man, I think it was that chapter that I had to cut the most words out of, because I'm a huge fan of Tom Holland's Dominion.
Yeah.
And there's a real temptation in writing a book where it's just like, well, can I just say everything that he said? Because it was so good. It was so brilliant, right? But the point that he made was that it was actually the long-suffering Christian compassion that spread across an empire that every value and virtue of its culture and society was organized in direct opposition to Christian virtue and compassion, and especially hospitality. And hospitality became the mechanism of that kind of viral spread of the gospel, because the ancient world values hospitality, bar none. The entire Roman society was built on a patronage system that included patrons who would give gifts to their clients, and then their clients would therefore owe them a loyalty and a commitment to them. So it's a reciprocal obligation. That's hospitality. But what the gospel did is it turned what was often a transactional and imbalanced kind of economic and social relationship, it turned it into one of such radical sacrificial generosity from top to bottom and the bottom up, because Jesus is the head of the church. He is the patron. And that's, by the way, the head, Jesus as head, is the same word that is used in the Greek to describe a patron over a household. So when Paul is speaking in Ephesians 4 about how the church is God's household, what he's doing is he's actually contextualizing the Old Testament paradigm of covenant into a New Testament Greco-Roman world. And he's demonstrating how, yes, reciprocal obligation is actually vitally important for us to have social and economic ties. However, when our patron, when the head of the church is one who gave himself up for his people, that infuses it with a completely different, out of this world, transcendent hospitality and generosity that, as it permeated throughout all the systems of the Roman Empire and turned it inside out and upside down. And I love that, because that actually, in a world and in a cultural moment where we are valuing impact over legacy and influence, and we are trying to, do our part and change the world. I hate that phrase so much.
Me too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I get a little ranty when I bring up the, be the change you wish to see in the world. It's like, yeah, great. Who does that work for?
Yeah.
Anyway, the world is still miserable, so maybe we're not working hard enough.
Yeah.
But that hospitality is actually the key for unlocking everything that we've been talking about so far in this conversation, and everything about how we are using these church defeaters, these kind of cultural assumptions of individualism, to try and survive in an inhospitable world that is increasingly, despite how much we're able to mold and shape it, we're making a very inhumane environment for ourselves. And that hospitality is an essential ingredient to experiencing the truth, goodness, and beauty of the gospel, but also of actually flourishing despite however inhospitable the world around us gets.
I love that so much. Brad, thank you so much for this book and for your time today. And we're going to stick around and do a little bonus conversation about really fun, exciting stuff, the church, as we've talked about it, and politics, because you have a chapter that I'm excited to talk about. But thank you so much, Brad, for your work in this book and your time today.
Thanks for having me. I love it.
The HOLYPOST podcast is a production of HOLYPOST Media, produced by Mike Strelo, editing by Seth Gorvet. Help us create more thoughtful Christian media by subscribing to HOLYPOST Plus at holypost.com/plus. Also, be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts so more people can discover thoughtful Christian commentary, plus ukulele and occasional butt news. Visit holypost.com for show notes, news stories, HOLYPOST merchandise, and much, much more.